Odysseus was close enough to see the fires of Ithaca burning on the horizon. After years of war and wandering, home was only hours away. But while he slept, his own crew opened a sealed leather bag, believing it contained hidden treasure. Instead, they released every dangerous wind Aeolus had trapped inside. In a single moment, the sea carried them away from home and back into exile. How could one act of suspicion destroy their best chance to return? Welcome to Gods and Heroes Unveiled, where ancient myths reveal their darkest secrets. Aeolus, master of the winds. After leaving the island of the Lotus Eaters and surviving further dangers at sea, Odysseus eventually reached Iolia, the floating island of Aeolus. Aeolus was not one of the Olympian gods, but Zeus had given him authority over the winds. He could release them, restrain them, and direct them across the sea. When Odysseus arrived, Aeolus welcomed him as an honored guest. For an entire month, the king listened as Odysseus described the fall of Troy, the losses suffered by the Greek army, and the disasters that had followed him since the war ended. Aeolus treated the weary sailors generously. They were given food, shelter, and time to recover from the hardships of the voyage. But when Odysseus finally asked for help returning to Ithaca, Aeolus offered something far more valuable than ordinary hospitality. He prepared a powerful gift that could control the journey itself. Aeolus gathered the dangerous winds that might drive the ships away from their course. The north wind, south wind, and other violent currents were restrained so they could not interfere with the voyage home. Only one favorable wind was allowed to remain free. Its purpose was simple: carry Odysseus directly toward Ithaca. For the first time in years, the journey seemed to be under control. There was no monster to defeat, no impossible riddle to solve, and no hostile army blocking the way. All Odysseus had to do was protect the gift Aeolus had placed in his hands, the bag that could bring them home. Aeolus placed the dangerous winds inside a strong bag made from ox hide. He sealed its opening with a shining silver cord so tightly that none of the imprisoned winds could escape. The bag was then secured aboard Odysseus' ship. Inside it were the forces that had repeatedly driven the fleet away from its course. Violent winds capable of turning calm water into chaos and carrying a ship far from its destination. Aeolus released only the favorable west wind. It filled the sail and pushed the vessel steadily toward Ithaca. The gift appeared perfect, but it also created a serious problem. Aeolus entrusted the bag directly to Odysseus. The crew could see that their captain had received something valuable, but they were not told clearly what it contained. To Odysseus, secrecy may have seemed necessary. If the men touched the bag or loosened the cord, every dangerous wind would escape. But to the sailors, the sealed object invited suspicion. They had fought beside Odysseus at Troy. They had suffered through the same storms, hunger, and losses. Yet once again, their commander had received a private gift from a powerful king. The bag looked heavy. Its contents remained hidden. As the ship moved toward home, the men began to wonder whether Aeolus had filled it with gold, silver, and treasures intended only for Odysseus. The object that was supposed to guarantee their safe return slowly became a source of jealousy. The winds were securely trapped, but distrust had already begun to spread across the ship. Ithaca Appears. For 9 days and 9 nights, the west wind carried the ship steadily across the sea. Odysseus refused to leave the course in anyone else's hands. He remained awake at the steering oar, watching the sail, the stars, and the direction of the wind. He had already seen too many journeys destroyed by carelessness. This time, he intended to bring his men home himself. On the 10th day, the coastline of Ithaca finally appeared. The island was close enough for the sailors to recognize its shape. They could even see smoke and the glow of fires rising from the land. After 10 years at Troy and years of wandering, Odysseus had reached the edge of home. His wife Penelope was somewhere beyond those hills. His son Telemachus, whom he had left as an infant, was waiting in a kingdom that no longer knew whether its king was alive. Only a few more hours separated him from everything he had fought to recover. But Odysseus had not slept during the entire voyage from Aeolia. His body finally gave in. Believing the ship was safe and Ithaca was almost within reach, he released the steering oar and fell into a deep sleep. The favorable wind continued to carry them forward. The sealed bag remained beside him, and while their captain slept, the sailors began whispering about the treasure they believed he had hidden from them. The crew opens the bag. As Odysseus slept, the sailors gathered around the sealed bag. For 9 days, they had watched him guard it closely. He had remained awake while steering the ship, refusing to let anyone else take control. Now, with Ithaca visible ahead and their captain finally unconscious, suspicion overcame discipline. The men began to speak openly. They believed Aeolus had given Odysseus gold, silver, and valuable gifts. In their minds, the heavy leather bag contained treasure that their captain intended to keep for himself. Their resentment had been growing for years. They had fought in the same war, endured the same storms, and watched the same companions die. Yet Odysseus was the one welcomed by kings, given private gifts, and honored as the leader. Why? They wondered. Should he return home wealthy while they arrived with nothing? No one stopped to consider why treasure would be sealed so carefully or why Odysseus had guarded the bag without rest. They saw only secrecy, and secrecy looked like betrayal. The sailors loosened the silver cord. Immediately, the imprisoned winds burst free. The bag did not reveal gold. It released a violent storm. Powerful winds struck the sail from every direction. The calm sea erupted into chaos. The ship turned away from Ithaca as waves rose around it, and the coastline began to disappear. Odysseus woke to shouting, snapping ropes, and the roar of the storm. For one terrible moment, he saw what had happened. Home had been close enough to reach within hours. Now the same winds that Aeolus had carefully restrained were driving the ship back across the sea. The crew had opened the bag because they believed Odysseus had hidden treasure from them. Instead, they destroyed the greatest treasure they had left, their chance to return home. Sent back to Aeolus, the released winds carried the ship all the way back to Aeolia. When Odysseus realized where they had returned, despair nearly overwhelmed him. He had been close enough to see Ithaca, yet now the same floating island they had left days earlier stood before them again. Still, he chose not to surrender. Odysseus went ashore and approached Aeolus for a second time. He explained that the failure had not come from disobedience to the king's instructions, but from the ignorance and suspicion of his crew. He asked for another chance. Aeolus refused. To the master of the winds, the return of Odysseus could mean only one thing. The gods themselves were against him. Aeolus had already given him a direct path home. The dangerous winds had been restrained, the favorable wind had been released, and Ithaca had come within sight. Yet the journey had still failed. Aeolus therefore ordered Odysseus to leave the island immediately. He would not help a man who appeared to be hated and cursed by the gods. There would be no second bag. There would be no favorable wind. The exhausted sailors returned to their ship and began rowing away with no divine assistance and no clear route home. Their punishment was not only the loss of Ithaca. They had also lost the trust of the one powerful ruler willing to control the sea on their behalf. One act of suspicion had undone 9 days of perfect travel and left them farther from hope than before. Who was truly responsible? It is easy to blame the sailors for everything that happened. They opened the bag. They ignored the trust placed in Odysseus, allowed jealousy to overcome judgment, and released the winds when Ithaca was already in sight. Their mistake was driven by greed. But greed was not the only cause. The crew also acted because they no longer trusted their captain. Odysseus had accepted a mysterious gift from Aeolus and kept its contents secret. He guarded the bag personally for 9 days, refusing to explain why it could not be opened. To him, this may have seemed like caution. To the sailors, it looked like concealment. Odysseus also attempted to control the entire voyage alone. He remained at the steering oar without sleep, believing that only he could guarantee their safe return. But this decision made failure almost inevitable. No human being could remain awake forever. When exhaustion finally defeated him, the crew was left with responsibility they had not been prepared to understand. The sailors should have obeyed their leader. Yet a leader must also create trust, communicate danger, and ensure that others understand what is at stake. Had Odysseus simply told them that the bag contained destructive winds, they might never have touched it. Had the crew trusted him, no explanation would have been necessary. The disaster therefore began before the silver cord was loosened. It began when suspicion replaced loyalty and secrecy replaced communication. Aeolus had controlled the winds perfectly, but neither divine power nor favorable weather could repair the damaged relationship aboard the ship. Odysseus and his men were only hours from home. They possessed everything they needed to succeed, except trust. That was the true force that sent them back to sea. Not a monster. Not a god. Not even the winds themselves. It was the belief that the person beside them might be hiding something they deserved to possess. Conclusion: Odysseus and his crew did not lose Ithaca because the island was too far away. They had already reached it. The fires of home were visible on the horizon. The sea was calm, and the wind was carrying them toward everything they had fought to recover. Yet one moment of suspicion destroyed 9 days of perfect travel. The sailors believed the sealed bag contained treasure. Odysseus believed he could control the journey without trusting anyone else. Between greed, secrecy, and exhaustion, the greatest opportunity of their voyage disappeared. The cruelest part of the story was not that Odysseus still had a long journey ahead. It was that he had already reached home and lost it while he slept. Do you blame the crew for opening the bag, or should Odysseus have told them the truth? Share your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.